The Internet governance process is very different from the sort of governance process we're used to in other infrastructures, because the Internet is not a centralized thing. The brains of the system are not at the center. The brains of the system are at the edges, in the computers that we use. The resources of the information age are different. They are unlimited resources. That means that you can use an information piece and then you can reuse it, and it cannot disappear after use. In only a few years, the Internet has revolutionized trade, health, education, and indeed the very fabric of human communication and exchange. Moreover, its potential is far greater than what we've seen in the relatively short time since its creation. In managing, promoting, and protecting its presence in our lives, we need to be no less creative than those who invented it. Clearly, there is a need for governance, but that does not necessarily mean that it has to be done in the traditional way for something that is so very different. What is Internet governance? Why is it needed? Who governs the Internet? And how?
What we really have to look for is a new way of approaching the management of something like this, where you have to preserve the creativity, the innovation at the edges, because that's where the growth has come from. Challenge is, how do I combine innovation with that minimum engagement of the public which is required in order to protect the public interest?
And so I see the discussion on Internet governance as part of the broader discussion about how to manage the global information society, which is different from the industrial society.
The Internet is used by people. And once you have people in the Internet, then you need some kind of what I call social lubrication. So you need some kind of regulation, coordination, or whatever, something along those lines.
I don't think regulation is what is required for the Internet, but the governments have to have visibility of how it operates and an assurance that they can make as representatives of the people, that they can make assurances to the people that the Internet will continue to operate today, tomorrow, and in the medium and long term, as you would expect from any other critical infrastructure.
Governance can mean coordination, it can mean regulation, it can mean numerous different lightweight or heavyweight styles of activity and intervention. I think one of the difficulties that is being faced within WSIS and the WGIG process is, of course, the differing interpretations and meaning of the word governance.
Today, the Internet consists of 1 billion users worldwide. Thousands of new users join the net every day. The United Nations Working Group on Internet Governance, known as WGIG, has adopted the following working definition. Internet governance is the development and application by governments, the private sector, and civil society in their respective roles of shared principles, norms, rules, decision-making procedures, and programs that shape the evolution and use of the Internet. The Internet may be visualized as consisting of 3 layers. The bottom layer is represented by the telecommunication infrastructure which facilitates the transfer of electronic data. Telecommunication infrastructure includes the physical network necessary to run the Internet, such as underwater cables, telephone lines, fiber optics, satellites, microwaves, Wi-Fi, etc. The middle layer is the place where the Internet operates. It consists of a wide variety of Internet protocols and standards, such as TCP/IP, DNS, SSL. The main protocol is the TCP/IP, which stands for Transport Control Protocol, Internet Protocol. The TCP/IP controls the traffic flow on the Internet by dividing email, web data, and other Internet traffic into packages before sending them through the net. The top layer includes content and application standards such as HTML, XML, and Java scripts. The power of the Internet is that everyone can create an application as long as a few simple TCP/IP requirements are met. This has led to considerable invention and creativity. Email, the World Wide Web, e-banking, blogs, wiki, and Skype. Internet governance is an emergent field which has not yet been fully defined. There is, for instance, no consensus on the issues which should be included in a discussion of Internet governance. Should the focus be on narrow, mainly technical questions, or on broader issues concerning the impact of the Internet on society? Diplo has adopted a comprehensive approach which includes both. Our discussion is organized according to the following 5 baskets: infrastructure and standardization, legal, economic, development, and socio-cultural. The infrastructure and standardization basket contains core Internet governance issues usually included in the narrow definition of Internet governance. Most of these issues are related to technical running of the Internet. Some of them, such as DNS and management of IP numbers, have been within the focus of the Internet governance debate. The Internet Communication Protocol links computers all over the world. It relies on numeric addresses to identify each networked computer. Every node of this network is given a number, called an IP address.
You have an unlimited number of IP addresses, theoretically. Certainly, you have some limits in IP version 4, about 4 billion, but with IP version 6, you can, you have a resource, which enables to give every individual on the planet, that means the 6 billion individuals we have now on the planet, 10 million IP addresses. So mathematically this is a limited resource, but practically it's an unlimited resource.
IP addresses are allocated at the moment on the basis of demonstrated immediate demand.
You have to have a system in place for the allocation of IP addresses, because if you want to start a business in the Internet or you have your private website, you need an IP address and domain name. And so for IP addresses and domain names are crucial. They are core resources, otherwise you cannot communicate on the Internet.
Humans don't use numeric addresses to open web pages or send email. We use descriptive names because they're easier to remember. The Domain Name System, DNS, is a service that helps computers translate names into numeric addresses.
If you think of the Internet as a post office or a postal system, these functions are essentially ensuring that the addresses on the front of an envelope work. They're not about what you put in the envelope, who sends the envelope, who's allowed to read the envelope, how long it takes the envelope to get there, whether you put a price for the envelope. None of those issues are important for that function. The function is focusing on just ensuring that the address works.
When you type the name of a web page, such as www.google.com, your computer first has to ask a caching DNS server to translate the name into a numeric address. The caching DNS server is usually provided by your internet service provider the moment you connect to the internet. For frequently used names and addresses, your caching DNS server keeps data in the local memory and responds immediately. Your computer receives the network address of the Google web server. The computer uses the numeric address in order to communicate and obtain the web page. The caching DNS server only remembers recently used addresses, and even these expire after a while. In order to find the address of a new website, it has to contact one of the root servers. Root servers don't handle addresses of individual websites at all. What they do know is where to find answers about names that end with .com or .org, for example. They refer requests to top-level domain name servers for each of these generic domains. There are 13 root servers worldwide. They all contain the same information, so it does not matter which one is used.
The historical location of root servers would be another example. 10 of them are located in the United States, and their original location first reflects the development of the Internet in the United States, and also that one of the characteristics of a root name server is that you would like it to be as close to as many people on the network as possible, so that the response times from you to that root server are as quick as possible.
The stability of the root server has up till now worked fairly well, but it is a little bit vulnerable if, for any reason, all states decided, or some groups of states or groups of users decided not to follow that root server system. So the system is at this point working, but the potential is there for destabilization.
It's preferable that these routes be run with the agreement of the most important and the most relevant parties affected and respecting the needs of the users of the Internet. So there you have the need for a governance, not a government, but a governance agreement.
At the bottom level, telecommunication infrastructure, there's a risk of the physical network being destroyed as a result, for example, of damage caused to cables by attacks or natural disasters.
That the Internet has become a place for activity by organized crime. There's money to be made, and organized crime tend to exploit new technologies well before the legislators have come to grips with what it takes to control and regulate these technologies.
Our daily life, economy, policy, culture, interpersonal communication is dependent from the Internet. If the Internet doesn't function, this will have disastrous consequences.
And this includes most of the critical infrastructures of the developed world. Air transport, airports, air traffic control, hospitals, civil administration, government, electricity generation, water purification. And this makes it a target for actions by disgruntled groups, terrorists.
But there is also an abuse in the form of malicious code, viruses and spam, which may impair our ability to use our computer and to surf the net.
Spam is, in my mind, perhaps the most terrifying aspect of Internet stability. The governments must ensure that the legal elements are in place. This is the responsibility of the governments. technical solutions, it is up to the industry and to industrial self-regulation to provide software, to provide all these filters. I think we should have a strong law available for the worst cases. But I think we have to be honest and understand that we cannot invent a new international spamming police.
Certainly you can adopt a national law against spam, but if 95% of the spam comes from outside your country, it doesn't help too much. So that means you probably find 3 or 5 spammers in your own country, but what you can do with the spammers from elsewhere? Do you want to block all internet traffic coming from outside your country? Technically it could be possible, but the costs would be so extremely high that it would ruin you. So that means it makes no sense.
So we look at how, for example, if you take spam, by cutting down on spam, what happens is that you actually reduce traffic on internet, reduce costs for people in developing countries who have to pay for the download of spam.
Well, spam can only be dealt with if all governments and the organizations that use the internet and the organizations that provide internet services agree that it's bad and take collective measures, agreed measures, to deal with it.
The Legal Basket provides an initial mapping of Internet governance legal issues. The main focus is on the core legal issues such as jurisdiction, copyright, and data protection.
In mid-90s, there were views that the Internet requires different regulation. Basically, the slogan was, for this new revolutionary technology, we need different law. That law was called cyber law, virtual law.
There is a strong belief that in any case the Internet is not outside the legal framework, and before creating new laws you have to check whether there is not any existing legislation that would apply.
Number one, what is illegal offline is also illegal online. So what you have to improve first of all is the international cooperation among law enforcement.
Current legal system that we have in place with international private law is sufficient for regulating internet issues.
Online crime or cybercrime, such as fraud, identity theft, child pornography, etc., has spread through the web.
Deliberate introduction of a virus to damage somebody else's computer should be treated as a malicious act, as an intentional damage to another person's property, and I suspect that in every country in the world this would be treated as a criminal offense.
The cyber criminal doesn't need to be physically at the place where the crime is being committed. It could be somebody operating from another country where there is no legislation, where the actions this person is taking are not in fact illegal. So that's number one. The second one is that the risk of being caught, successfully prosecuted and punished are extremely small.
Internet reflects the problems of the general society. And if you don't like this mirror, you should not destroy the mirror, you should change the society.
We will take one hypothetical situation. You are a user and you are based in Switzerland and you access website which is, according to a few hints, based in the United States. But the server of that website is hosted in the Netherlands, and the person who operates that website is the citizen of Norway. Materials on the websites are basically produced by one Chinese company, and there are goods that could be purchased through the e-banking system which is maintained by Argentinian company. What is the jurisdiction that should be asked or approached to solve your case?
Clearly, one needs to have appropriate levels of protection for copyright and trademarks. But if those rules are too expansive, too unrestricted, there is the possibility that there could be negative implications from a public interest standpoint, as applying strong and very restrictive intellectual property rules to a wide variety of communications and information exchanges over the internet. The vibrancy of the internet is a global public sphere of ideas, an open debating space, an open space for dialogue and discourse, could be damaged. I believe that many governments felt that this issue is being dealt with in WIPO. We don't need to raise it in the WSIS context.
User beware. When you find information on the web, are you sure that this information is good enough for you to use it? Do you know, is it a reputable publisher? Is it of the right quality? Is it up to date? Is it complete? Is it accurate? Can you trace it? Can you use it? Is it protected? Is it not protected? If somebody puts something libelous or offensive or derogatory about you, can you have it removed? No way.
The Economic Basket focuses on the governance issues surrounding e-commerce development.
You have both a current situation in which private sector has been shaping most of the rules with regard to e-commerce, and a situation where governments are trying to determine in which elements of the e-commerce framework would it make sense to have some governmental authority.
There is an exponential growth of electronic commerce. Goods and services are now available online, and payments are made through credit cards.
The reality is that if you look at what's been done in the WTO, in particular under the General Agreement on Trade and Services, we have international rules of the game that are legally binding treaties with dispute resolution mechanisms attached to them that set out rules for how transactions conducted over the internet in a commercial context may be shaped. It has been understood by everybody that the trade rules do apply to commercial transactions that take place over the internet.
Since its early days, the internet has been considered to be the engine that could facilitate development. It's not yet clear if the internet has narrowed or widened the gap between developed and developing countries. This basket focuses on the various governance aspects of internet and development.
If you look ahead, the greatest growth of the internet is going to take place in developing countries. That's where the new users are going to come. The second thing is, if you look at the nature of the use in developing countries, a much larger proportion of the use is for what I call public service application, non-commercial public service application, education, health, delivery of government services.
The major problem is not getting the connectivity, but it's getting the people, getting the computers to the people, because right now you can't just get a nice cheap way of connecting to the internet. You need to get a computer that costs $500 US or $1,000 US, which is an awful lot of money.
You have a situation where the majority of the people of the world are not represented in the structures that do exist. I don't even mean represented physically as people, but their issues, are not represented.
Right now, the internet is a white Western male province. But we're working really hard to change that and make it a truly inclusive place where everybody all over the world can participate.
The internet has become a powerful social network. It has been engineering many changes in the way we interact and how our cultural surroundings are managed. This basket focuses on the issues such as content policy, multilingualism, and the public good.
Content policy is one of the key internet governance issues. Discussion on content policy usually involves high political controversies and a lot of different views. Content policy could be discussed and could be mapped around three types of the content. For the first type of the content, there is a global consensus that this content should be prohibited from the net. It includes child pornography or, for example, justification of genocide. The second type of the content is related to cultural, religious and national specificities. For some countries, some regions, certain content is not acceptable due to those specific religious, national and cultural features. The third type of the content, which usually attracts the most media attention, is related to the censorship.
I would think multilingualism, the multilingual internet, both with regard to internationalized domain names and also with regard to content, is a very clear example for this. Engineers coming with an Anglo-Saxon background have developed the internet based on ASCII characters, and for them the necessity to develop the technology to make it available in other languages was just not there, and they admitted. Now, when they developed it, they did not know it would spread the way it spread.
Globally, the internet is structured on a system that does not recognize national boundaries, linguistic boundaries. Maybe the first and foremost that which India is also now currently grappling with is the IDN, that is the internationalized domain names, so that people who do not know English can write internet addresses in their local languages.
So the confusion of domain names is a very dangerous thing. And so the Internet Engineering Task Force and ICANN have both looked to find rules for registering these new scripts. Okay, policy in this case tends to be technical policy.
Using information and communication technologies, ICTs, for reducing the gender-digital divide, for creating opportunities for gender-based programs is very, very important.
We agreed that the internet is a public good. We also agreed that there was a need for the internet to be managed in a coordinated manner, which is essential. The challenge I think that we have is to look for a mechanism that could be an organization, that could be a combination of organizations put together, that would enable that collaboration, that collaborative effort together. We need to find a mechanism that is representative of everyone.
There are a multiplicity of institutions around, but the fragmented nature of present arrangements is it that makes it so difficult also for developing countries to participate in these arrangements.
For developing countries, and particularly for countries on the African continent, we do not have the expertise, especially in terms of numbers in different countries, as well as the financial resources to participate in a multiplicity of organizations. And therefore, for that reason, the ideal situation would be that we should have one organization that coordinates all of this, where we all come together, and then that your voice has been heard, and you can go home peacefully.
The problem with establishing a single organization is that the single organization usually doesn't have a single purpose. I happen to think it's a little premature to think about that. Many of the access issues, which is of concern to the developing countries, access to the broadband, access to the technology, could actually be solved within existing organizations.
To create a new organization is politically unthinkable, and to give the role to one organization is not feasible, because it takes us back to WSIS 1 days. There are those who would like to see this institution, there are those who would like to see that organization in charge of all the issues, but there's definitely no agreement to give one organization the remit over all the issues, and in a sense it's also not realistic because the issues are so diverse.
historically the internet has developed from a small research community, and it has expanded. It has expanded because it was such a powerful and flexible tool of communication. Today we have 1 billion users. It is a major part of commerce. It's an important source of support for the provision of public services. Now at this stage, you can't just talk in terms of designing a system which the technical community which has been involved in the preparation of internet finds credible. You also have to find a solution which would be credible in the eyes of the users, the commercial sector, the governmental sector. And that's why the process that we've had is a multi-stakeholder process.
Certainly governments have power and they have a very important role in public policy, there's no doubt about that. But the technical community has a lot of power in itself as to where the technology develops to. Having a dialogue between those two is very important. Not having a dialogue between those two diminishes the power of both. Similarly with the business community, similarly with the users.
Many of the problems that are being raised now derive exactly from the fact that there's a lot of technical governance going on, but there's not enough policy governance going on. So the engineers like me actually have created the IETF, some work at the ITU, some work at the W3C or in other groups, also private sector groups. There's I think hundreds of standardization forums that discuss of technical matters. The problem is that there is almost no place where these technical solutions are evaluated in their social and economical implications.
And for any new services, for any new technologies which we would like to offer to the public with new services, I don't believe you can find solutions purely from technical point of view. The ITU from very beginning did not put the technology as a pure solutions to meet the expectation from our public.
What has happened in some parts of India is that the internet has reduced the distance between the people and the sources of information. For instance, a farmer wants information about his land record, which is held in a district headquarters, which may be 100 miles away. In the old days, he would travel there, and he would lose a lot of time, he would spend a lot of money, and he would have a lot of difficulties at the other end, not being from that town, in getting the information. What some people did was put all that information online. Now, of course, a farmer in India can't afford his own computer, nor does he need a computer on a daily basis. So what was encouraged was the establishment of kiosks where, let's say, a young graduate has a computer and provides a service for a certain fee. The farmer goes to that man goes online, downloads the relevant information, prints it out, and charges the farmer something. That's how he sustains his business. The farmer saves a lot of money, and this young man runs a business.
But there is a critical national level dialogue that needs to go on between governments, business, and civil society and individual users to ensure that the internet is embraced and integrated at a national level in a way that's going to make it most productive for citizens, businesses, governments, and civil society groups.
The regional internet registries are responsible for allocating internet addresses to either internet service providers or in some cases to end users. When we allocate blocks of internet address space to a regional internet registry, we trust that regional internet registry to hand out its addresses in a unique way.
I think one of the key ones from the Asia-Pacific region is that there are going to be more than 1 billion users of the internet. The Asia-Pacific has a larger share of those than either Europe or North America. Yet its participation in the governance mechanisms has been well below what the actual impact is going to be of internet governance on these stakeholders, the users in the Asia-Pacific. So the question of how to improve that representation has been a key one.
The multi-stakeholder approach basically involved canvassing the views of all the various stakeholders, and we did this in a number of ways. First and foremost, through face-to-face consultations that took place around the region, places like Kathmandu and Fiji and Bali and so forth, where people from within the region came together and discussed and debated the various questions and issues.
I think what we've seen out of the WSIS stage of internet governance has been a transfer by governments over an 18-month period from a model which said all solutions come top-down from the sovereign to a recognition that in a truly globalized infrastructure, this is the most globalized technology, which does not understand boundaries. It's not constructed around boundaries. Just topography doesn't recognize boundaries. That in that sort of context, it's important at a national level, at a regional level, and at an international level that you actually have multi-stakeholder processes, such that all parties can understand what's going on.
Interesting thing about the internet is that its technology is always evolving, and as the technology evolves, so does the use. So in that sense, internet governance has to take that into account.
We should also look at the history of the internet as something which has developed largely without the strong involvement of governments, and that has been a part of what has made it unique and given it the strength that it has today.
The internet has evolved. That's one of the interesting things. The protocols are based on packet switching. It's an interesting technology. That part has certainly not changed, but certainly the ability of these packets to be moved quickly and rapidly, and the number of them has certainly changed.
The internet will be a different beast in 6 to 9 months from what it is today. So how do we try and find policy solutions for something that is a very dynamic and changing situation?
Well, in 10 years, maybe we'll be saying, gone are the good old days that we used to use the domain name. Or do you remember that we used to use something called domain name? Oh, really? You never know, because we never used that 15 years ago. So, and things are changing much rapidly perhaps than now. So we may say like, well, do you remember that we used to have a PC? What is that, Daddy?
Paradoxically, the world of ones and zeros cannot be managed by binary logic and dichotomous approaches of either-or, good-bad, progressive-regressive, open-closed, or us and them. The governance of the Internet requires an appreciation for different perspectives, various approaches, subtle differences, and managing paradoxes. We need analog solutions for digital problems.